Chapter 71. So, what is it that you wish to tell us? I propose a collaboration. I will guide and assist you, and in return, you stop pursuing my brethren. We refuse. Yudhir's response was cold and swift. Despite the man's sacrificial stance for his subordinates, Yudhir didn't sense a shred of noble determination or the caution of a negotiator from him. And why should he accept the proposal of a seemingly tricky fellow without a compelling reason? Nevertheless, despite the chilly refusal, the man merely tugged at one corner of his lips, showing no signs of defeat or despair. Rather blunt, but that's to be expected if you are still unfamiliar with the obstinacy and arrogance of the Eastern nobles. Even if you were on an imperial mandate, it wouldn't be easy here. How fast do you think you can achieve your goal among yourselves? In my opinion, it seems impossible. Do you know something more? If you are curious, accept my proposal. There will be no harm to you, I promise. Even in this unfavorable situation, his audacity clearly stemmed from a confidence in something. If it had been up to Yudhir, he would have trashed the man soundly and forced the truth out of him. But this tactic worked with some and not with others, and unfortunately, Yudhir's instinct told him that this man would not be swayed by such an approach. If Kishir were here instead of me, Yudhir suddenly thought about the absent Kishir. Kishir might have left this man to his devices just to see what he would do out of pure curiosity. That was his way. His method was risky, but it had definitive advantages. When confident in superior power, there was no better way to obtain information. And this mission is an exploration mission. It has always been my weak point. Yudhir made a decision. Whatever abilities the man in front of him might have, Yudhir did not sense that he was stronger. If it were within tolerable limits, he might be okay to mimic Kishir just once and follow the man's lead. Fine. Yudhir! Gakane was startled by the short agreement that followed a lengthy silence and called Yudhir's name. He had naturally expected Yudhir to refuse the man's proposal. Yudhir gestured to reassure him before continuing. Do as you wish. You'd probably follow us anyway, even if we refused. You have caught on. You are right. The man with the odd scar smiled calmly and nodded. But before that, tell me the real reason why you'll try to follow us and what the Eastern nobles are hiding. Impatient, are we? If I don't like the preliminary information, I will arrest you on the spot and turn you over the guards. You seem to have done quite a bit of threatening. Fine. Mutual trust is important after all. With those words, the man raised his hand lightly, swirling the air. Suddenly, the atmosphere among them changed dramatically, as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the true sky. Beneath the brightly shining moon and stars, a peaceful mountain landscape appeared. A new horse that had not been visible before was quietly tied to a tree, grazing on the grass. The man effortlessly loosed the reins of the bound horse and climbed upon it. Everyone was unable to contain their astonishment at such a natural display. The sky had suddenly cleared. The horse too. Is that man's power? The little brother is smarter than he looks. The man answered in a low voice. Understanding Jimmy's question, whispered to Yudhir loud and clear. Exactly as you said, this is indeed my power. An illusion? Yudhir asked quietly. The man nodded, a gleam passing through his seemingly ordinary eyes. Yes, it's not as impressive as your skills, but it has various uses. Thanks to its power, despite my appearance, I can be free anywhere and quickly notice when guests like you appear. His explanation was ambiguous. but they could guess what he meant. His illusionary ability exceeded merely hiding his grotesque appearance. It was exceptional enough to cover an entire area and detect those who intruded upon. Yther had met a few illusion casters in the past life. However, their abilities were not as exceptional as the man before him. He wondered if the individuals possessing such a level of skill had met an early death while hanging out with bandits in his previous life. So, you are so confident because you thought you could escape anything? Even knowing what your ability is, it would be difficult to detect it. Troublesome. Gakane also seemed to understand the hidden intent in the man's words, murmuring with a grimace on his face. Now, let's discuss the details while on our way. It's not far to the village, but it would be best to get there as soon as possible. At the man's suggestion, Yther quietly climbed onto a horse. Gakane and Jimmy also mounted horses. They followed the leisurely advancing man without letting their guard down. Among my brothers, there are one originally in charge of visiting the village to keep tabs on the situation and buy food supplies. However, some time ago, this brother headed to the village as usual but didn't return. The other brothers thought he had run away with the money for the food, but I didn't think so. The voice of the scarred man was surprisingly clear, audible even amongst the rustling wind in the dark and the noise of the horse's hoofs against the ground. That brother was surely caught, but I couldn't save him until now because I didn't know where he was imprisoned. Not until the person you were looking for came here. What does that have to do with it? Jimmy bravely frowned and asked his question. The old lord and the couple who had visited to receive their title early died in a fire that day. Despite such a big incident, the remaining two sons have yet to report it to the capital. The whole village is buzzing that the man you're looking for will soon be executed, but no one knows where he's imprisoned. His family members also disappeared somewhere after that day, but no one talks about it. Don't you think it's strange? Does it mean that someone deliberately confined them somewhere and is trying to quietly bury the incident? When Yther asked curtly, the man turned to look back at him. In the East, they respect the house of Duke Diarca more than Emperor. His answer flowed, seemingly a bit irrelevant. Did you know that ever since some rumors spread that the recent emperor had his younger brother form a cavalry, persecutions against awakeners had intensified in the East? That there have been an increase in cases where awakeners of common origin possessing notable abilities were suddenly framed and unjustly prisoned? No one knows where they have gone. I haven't heard of such things happening around here before I left for the test. Of course, unlike the capital, there were many people who were afraid of the awakeners. Jimmy. Yther called out Jimmy's name curtly, compelling him to close his mouth, but the man had already turned his attention to Jimmy. Just because you're from here, it doesn't mean you know everything, especially a young boy like you. Your exposure to information is limited, but were your parents also like that? At the man's words, Jimmy's expression changed instantly. What do you mean? Usually, no matter how strong they are, they wouldn't send a young child alone to a distant place. But what if they thought it was more dangerous to stay here than going to the capital? A low voice sent a strong ripple through everyone's mind. Was it the little brother's decision to take the cavalry test? Or was it instigated by the parents' suggestion? What did they say to you if you failed the exam? Did they tell you to come back? If it were me, I would have asked someone I know to look after you and told you to stay there for a while. Yther read the shock in Jimmy's open mouth and trembling eyes. It suggested that the man's conjecture wasn't too far from the truth. I'm not lying. After I came here, in a few months, the East became increasingly hard for people like us to live. Many of my brethren have fled here like that. You either thought about the man's mention of the East, where the influence of Duke Diarca House is stronger than the Emperor. The history of the repeated rivalry and alliance between the imperial house of the Or Empire and the four ducal houses was exceedingly long. When the imperial authority was strong, the power of the ducal houses weakened, and vice versa. In his past life, the Emperor Yudir was a foster son of Duke of Diarca ducal house, so he did not antagonize the ducal houses. But what about the current emperor? If Kishir had judged that the power of the cavalry created was beneficial to the emperor, the four ducal houses would have worked to obstruct it. Could the sudden arrest of Devron, a member of cavalry here, be related to that? He would have to meet Devron to be sure, but it seemed a high probability. In my previous life, there were no general vacation at this time, and Devron didn't disappear, so I couldn't have known that such a thing was happening in the East. I think there's a high chance that one you are looking for is being held in the same place as my brother, or at least knows something that could be a clue. The man finished his story, saying he had followed Yudir and the cavalry members for that reason. Yudir felt that he wasn't lying, but he didn't let down his guard. A cold, chilling gaze that did not even hide when he called everyone with the same power a brother was not to his liking. Was his reason for taking the risk to join them really just because of his comrades?